All right, so inevitably, if you're watching this video, you know that there are two new models available now within ChatGPT and currently 4+ subscribers. So the first one is GPT-o1 Mini and the other one is GPT-o1 Preview. Now, they do talk a little bit about these models and there are some really interesting things. Now, it is not my intention to really just read through these documents, as I never really saw the point of that when you could just go read them yourself instead of watch someone read them to you. I don't know. So it just shows here, though, that these models are really impressive in terms of some of the ways that they had tested them. So the one thing I will really mention here, which I think is cool, is on the International Mathematics Olympiad 4.0, which is the previously available GPT-4 version in the ChatGPT web interface, solved 13% of problems. The reasoning model, which is the new O, I assume, the O1 and O1 Mini, scored 83%. So their coding abilities were evaluated and reached the 89th percentile in Codeforce's competition. And I would like to see what GPT-4o did. So here's the code for, good Lord. Okay, so GPT-4o scored 11 in the 11th percentile. O1 scored 62 in the preview, and then the actual O1 scored 89. Now what we have here is the O1 preview. So this scored 62%. So what I want to do right now is really kind of make this thing do work. So I'm a big fan of the future of AI and game development and things like that. So what I want to do is ask it to generate a retro synthwave style Python outrun driving game sort of thing using no external, what's the term for like game assets? Assets, that's it. Thank you. All right, so all right, so I've asked it, okay, we're making this retro synthwave style outrun driving game. It should be a simple driving experience and it needs to utilize 0 external game assets. So what we see here, which is something we don't see previously with GPT-4o and ChatGPT, is that it's actually explaining to us what it's doing while it's doing it. So first, it's piecing together a Python-driven retro synthwave driving game. The goal is to craft everything with math and ASCII art, excluding any external assets. So good. And it's funny because okay, let me see. Like something you wouldn't normally expect. I mean, that's more human than you would think. So, and it did. I'm digging through OpenAI's policies to ensure the code is correct and helpful and that it adheres to guidelines on graphics and disallowed content. Now, that is something that was specifically mentioned in some of these articles here, where that it is harder to quote unquote jailbreak this model to do things that it's not supposed to. Going to use Pygame, okay? Focusing on procedural graphics and perspective lines for the road and horizon. That is pretty cool. Setting up the Pygame window to draw the graphics. Setting up the environment. Okay, let me see. So it says that again. So that seems to be a common theme in kind of its thought process feedback. Mapping out the game code and structure, including the module imports, setting up Pygame, colors, functions, and managing the game loop. Focusing on brevity, I'm honing in on producing manageable code while adhering to guidelines of relevance. Setting up the game. I'm initializing Pygame, setting up the screen dimensions, everything like that, okay? And we see here, really this did stick to simplicity. I mean, it's using 3 imports, Pygame, Sys, and Math. So excuse me, that's really interesting. It's not doing any threading or anything like that. And you can see here that scrolling through this is just a ton of math related stuff. So it's telling me how to do it. Left arrow key, move the car to the left. Right arrow key, move the car to the right. And here are the 2 dependencies you need. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and test this because this is pretty cool. So I have a con environment here, so I just need to install Pygame in it. Okay, and it was pretty simple to do that. So paste it here, clear our terminal, make sure that it is showing up, and it isn't, so I'll just switch out of this and back into it, and it should say, hey, I know you. All right, and I'm going to save it as synthwave. Sure. And now we run it and see what happens. Okay, sorry, I've paused because I'm actually really impressed with the graphics that it generated. So color scheme wise, it totally nailed the retro synthwave style view. Now, what we're seeing here is that it doesn't actually look like we're driving anywhere. So something is not updating or something like that, but the arrow keys are working to move the car side to side, and it did even like name itself Retro Synthwave Outrun Driving Game. So what I'm going to do here is ask it and say, it's not running. So I'm asking it, okay, we don't have any movement, and I wanted to do a little 8-bit soundtrack. There's some music-related libraries in Python that it should be able to do that with pretty quick. But while it does that, oh, that's the wrong thing. Let's just go back in here and see this again. I mean, this is pretty cool. I know you'll be like, hey, this looks like crap, but it's the principle of what it generated. And beyond that, it simply generated the game, but just by saying retro synthwave style, it really grasped the color palette, the graphical design, and kind of the thing like that. So I'm eager to see how this looks when it actually starts moving. Sorry to hear it wasn't as noticeable as you'd like. Okay, well, it wasn't noticeable at all, but all right, I'll give you that. Okay, and I'm inevitably going to need to install another dependency for the audio. All right, good. And I shouldn't have known that was already in there. So we're going to try this one more time, and we're just going to copy paste. And what I really want to highlight in this is how good it is at basically allowing somebody who really has no prior knowledge of code or anything like that to actually hop in and make something. All right, so it opened and it closed. So the array must be 2-dimensional for the stereo mixer. Okay, I'm just going to please fix. And let's just look through some of its working on adding movement. Seems to be issue with the input's array dimensions. It should be 2-dimensional to match the stereo mixer. I need to adjust it accordingly. Okay, let me see. The issue could be with the waveform array's dimension. Ensuring it's 2D for stereo sound might resolve the error. And I'm going to read through this because this is really, I believe, what a lot of people may be actually interested in these models is the thought process behind what is being generated. So it should address the error by offering a corrected code that either adjusts the Pygame mixer for mono sound or tweaks the waveform to be 2D by replicating the mono signal into 2 channels, making, okay, policy compliance. I'm not quite sure what that means, but 1D waveform, 2D stereo. Okay, and it's just kind of explaining what it's doing. Sorry for the inconvenience. The error you're encountering is due to the fact that the Pygame mixer is initialized for stereo audio by default, which expects a 2-dimensional array, one for each channel. However, the generated waveform is a 1-dimensional array, which is mono audio. To fix this, we need to convert the mono waveform into a stereo waveform by duplicating the mono channel. Simple enough. So let's just delete, paste, and scroll down, see if it says anything else here. All right, so it's giving us a little more information, but I would like to, okay, so 2-channel stereo buffer size. All right, let's just run it and okay, so it kind of just is making like a single, I'm gonna turn the sound on. This sound is weird, but I mean, you can see it is showing the road driving forward, and we do have our quote unquote car moving around. So, and then it has just kind of a static sound, which I suppose is okay. So I'm gonna go one more with this. I'm gonna ask it. All right, so I'm asking it, can you please make the car look a little more like a car instead of a rectangle? And also, is it possible for you to actually make the sound run through sort of like almost like a piano scale on a keyboard or something like that, which it will be able to do pretty simply because it knows what the pitch frequency of the notes should be, and then it can kind of just map those out to run through back and forth, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but that is my understanding of it. So yeah, so it knows the frequencies, so it's just going to loop through, and these are correlated with the specific chord on a piano. Now obviously these will just sound like beeps, but that's kind of what we want. Okay, so neon pink, I like that right there. All right, so let's copy code. We'll just paste this in. And I don't want this video to be like an hour long, you know, I mean, this is something you're gonna just want to play with yourself, but I wanted to kind of just see what this does and how it does it. So I'm gonna clear that and run this. All right, my sound is off, so. Well, it did exactly what I'd asked it to, and it made the car more car-like. I mean, really, this is not bad at all. And I understand that it might look like it, but think of like, all right, I'm gonna maybe close this, but just the way that this is all done here is just all like very simple. I mean, to make a game with few imports and just really heavy on the graphics being drawn, like how it does, it says it's procedurally generating like the road that's following forward at you, which is, I didn't really check to see if it is, but now this is really very impressive. I'm very impressed with this. It's giving me also something I noticed about this model that I haven't necessarily noticed with GPT-4o and ChatGPT is that it really gives you a lot of pertinent information following giving you what you specifically asked it for. So basically all I asked it for was just give me this code, but it also goes ahead and explains the changes to you, We added a rear spoiler. We added a sloped roof. We added a main body. I mean, look at all this. And it's like it's really quite interesting. The updated soundtrack. So here is our C major scale and the frequencies to ascend. So up and then back down, and it will loop that. Create sine wave forms for each note and concatenated them to form a melody. Okay, and that's how we can kind of hear it musically, and the soundtrack loops. And it tells me how to run the game, the controls, the dependencies, notes of essentially what it did, troubleshooting if you have any problems, further enhancements, scoring system, visual effects. All right, I think last thing I'm going to do here, please implement all suggested further enhancements. And then we'll do that. We'll see what it does. So it's adding particle effects, which I'm very interested in seeing. Multiple levels? Interesting. I should have it add in a menu. Pause and resume. Simple, but... And while this looks very simple, it's just doing it all first try, which is nice to see. Really, it's nice to see. Okay. We have collision detection. Running is set to false and ends the game if it detects a collision. Okay, we have particle effects. Neon blue, which is absolutely fitting of this style. The level increases every time the player reaches a certain score threshold, which is... Where's the threshold? Oh, it increases difficulty. Okay, that's really cool. All right, let's run this. I'm excited to run this. Wow, it does have the particle effects underneath the car. I'm not seeing any obstacles here, but I also didn't get any terminal errors down here in the console. So, I mean, it's my score is going up. The road has disappeared, but it is interesting. I'm on level 2 now. All right, so the level updated. So it seems like the 5,000 score was the level threshold to go on to the next level. I'm just going to wait till 10,000 and then see if it goes to level 3. I'll move the mouse out of the way. Yep. All right. So very cool. Very cool. And I played with Mini. The thing is, I'm not going to do a lot right now because these limits are like, they're hilariously low. It's like 30 a week for this one, and I think 50 a week for Mini, which is like, what the, like, you know, so. But I think this was a fun way to test this thing. Impressive and very enjoyable. I look forward to making some interesting games with this.